My name is Ahmed Hassan, and I have carried secrets for 70 years that have eaten away at my soul like acid eating through stone. I was an imam. I held authority in my community that most men only dream of. People came to me with their deepest struggles, their moral questions, their need for guidance and direction. They trusted me absolutely with their secrets and their souls. They believed I was a vessel of God's truth and wisdom. But I am here to tell you, in what may be my final days on this earth, that behind the closed doors of our Islamic institutional leadership, there are things happening that would break your heart and shatter your faith in the very institutions meant to protect it. I have seen corruption so deep, so systematic, so carefully hidden behind verses in prayer, that I spent decades pretending it did not exist. I enforced a religion I eventually realized was being used as a weapon by powerful men against the vulnerable and the innocent. I was complicit in this system. I was silent when I should have spoken, and that silence has cost me everything that truly mattered in this lifetime. I am 92 years old now, and I have very little time left to tell you what I have learned. I need you to stay with me. I need you to hear this carefully and with an open heart. Not because I deserve to be heard, but because there may be someone watching who is where I was, trapped in a system of control, masked as devotion. Perhaps you are struggling with the same questions I struggled with. Perhaps you sense that something is not right in the institutions that claim to speak for God. Perhaps you have questions about whether the authority you are under is truly serving God or serving the men who wield that authority. If you are feeling those doubts, please know you are not alone. Listen to my story. Please, bear witness to what I am about to tell you. I was born into Islam in 1934. In a city where the call to prayer echoed from the minarets 5 times each day, a sound that shaped the rhythm of every breath I took. My father was a scholar, respected and learned, a man whose opinion shaped the spiritual lives of hundreds of families in our community. He was also a strict man, demanding absolute obedience and perfection. From the time I could walk, I was taught that Islam was not merely a religion, but a complete way of life, a perfect system given directly by God for the ordering of all human affairs. There was no room for doubt, no space for questions, no possibility that human institutions could be wrong. My childhood was structured entirely around Islamic practice, every moment accounted for, every action measured against religious principle. I woke before dawn for Fajr prayer, my small feet padding across cold tile floors while the world still slept. I memorized the Quran beginning at age 4, sitting with elderly scholars who would place their weathered hands on my head and test my knowledge of the sacred text. By age 12, I had committed all 114 surahs to memory, every single verse, every word in perfect Arabic. My father would test me rigorously, and when I made even the smallest mistake, he would strike my hands with a cane. The pain was sharp and immediate, and I learned that perfection in religious knowledge was not optional. It was a divine requirement, a sign of my chosen status among God's people. I came to believe that God had marked me for something special and important, that my suffering and discipline were refining me for greatness and wisdom. As a teenager, I felt a genuine love for Islam. The prayer was beautiful to me. There was something transcendent about standing before God 5 times a day, prostrating myself, feeling the weight of my forehead on the prayer mat, knowing that millions of other Muslims around the world were doing exactly the same thing at that same moment. It felt like belonging to something infinite and eternal. I felt chosen, destined for greatness. By 22, I was recognized as an exceptional Islamic scholar with a reputation that extended beyond our local mosque. The community approached my father and asked if I would become an imam. I accepted without hesitation. I was installed as a religious authority, and the respect that followed was intoxicating, in ways I cannot adequately describe. People would stand when I entered a room. They would kiss my hand and bow slightly. Men would consult me on every decision, business matters, marriage problems, disputes with neighbors. Women would seek my approval for how to raise their children. I had power. I had status. I had authority that was absolute, because it came, or so everyone believed, directly from God through His scripture. I was no longer just Ahmed. I was the Imam. I was important. I was somebody. For 50 years, I lived in that position with complete certainty that I was doing God's work, that I was a channel through which divine will flowed into the world. Looking back now, I can see that I was intoxicated by my own authority and power, though I told myself every day that I was merely an instrument of God's will. I enforced strict adherence to Islamic law with unwavering conviction and certainty. I gave religious rulings that shaped how my community lived, the choices they could make, the freedoms they could enjoy. I told women how to dress, how to behave, what their role in society should be. I told men to discipline their wives if they disobeyed. I taught that music was forbidden, that dating was forbidden, that any deviation from strict Islamic law was a sin that could damn your soul to hell for all eternity. I believed every word I taught. I enforced these rules with iron certainty and no room for mercy or compassion. My community was afraid of me, but they also respected me. That fear was part of what made me feel powerful and important. I slept well at night knowing my position was secure. I felt righteous. I felt that my life had meaning and purpose in a way that most men never experience, a sense of being chosen for something greater than myself. But beginning around 1990, when I was in my mid-50s, I started to notice things that did not align with the sacred teachings I had dedicated my life to defending. It started small. I attended a council meeting with the senior imams from the surrounding mosques, and I noticed that discussions about distributing charity funds to poor families somehow always resulted in money being diverted to projects that benefited wealthy businessmen and their commercial interests. The more I looked, the more I saw the pattern emerge clearly. When I questioned this corruption, an older imam pulled me aside and explained with a kind smile that if we did not keep the wealthy donor satisfied, the mosque would have no money at all. He told me I was naive, that I did not understand how the world truly operated. He implied that I was foolish for believing in the purity of our sacred principles. I should have walked away. By the late 1990s, the corruption became harder to ignore or deny. A young man came to me and disclosed that a senior religious figure, a man I had known for 30 years, a man I considered a mentor and almost a father figure, had sexually abused him repeatedly when he was a child. The young man was traumatized, ashamed, afraid of the consequences of speaking out. He begged me to report it to the authorities. He wanted justice. He wanted protection. He wanted to prevent this from happening to other children. Instead, I reported it to the Imam Council. The council met in private, and the senior figure was quietly moved to a different mosque in a different city. Money was given to the young man's family, with instructions to remain silent. They were paid to bury the truth. The council told me that such accusations could not be allowed to damage the reputation of Islam itself. They said that the faith was more important than one person's suffering. I accepted this explanation. I accepted it without question. I told myself that protecting the institution was protecting God Himself. The young man, broken and betrayed by the very man he trusted to protect him, eventually took his own life 5 years later. I knew this. I attended his funeral, and I said nothing. I have lived with that knowledge for 25 years, carrying it like a stone in my chest. There was also a wealthy businessman who wanted a religious ruling that would allow him to charge interest on loans to poor families, strictly forbidden in Islamic law. He came to me with gifts and donations. I refused initially. Within weeks, the Imam Council essentially instructed me to reverse my position. They told me I was making the mosque appear inflexible and out of touch, and I capitulated. I issued the ruling. I put my name behind something that contradicted the very scriptures I had memorized. I had sold my integrity for the comfort of my position. The religious authority I had believed was separate from worldly power, was completely entangled with it. We were not above politics. We were not above corruption. We were men, just men, using the language of the divine to consolidate power, to control behavior, to silence dissent. My daughter's name was Fatima. She was born in 1972, and she was the light of my life. I had been taught that attachment to worldly things was a distraction from God, that even love for one's children should be subordinate to love for God. But I loved her fiercely. She memorized portions of the Quran as I had done. She was respectful and obedient. And then she met a young man named David at university in 2005. He was Christian. When she confessed it to me, I told her that to marry outside of Islam was a grave sin. I told her that if she pursued this relationship, she would bring shame upon our entire family. I would enforce the Islamic principle of shunning. My wife, Layla, begged me to reconsider. She told me that love was more important than doctrine, that our daughter's happiness mattered more than our reputation. I refused to listen to her pleas. I told Fatima she had a choice: end the relationship or leave and never be welcome in our home again. She chose David. The community followed my lead. Families who had known Fatima since childhood stopped speaking to her. Former friends would cross the street rather than acknowledge her. I commanded this silence. My own daughter became invisible. My wife wept every day for years. She would sometimes go to see Fatima in secret. Occasionally, I would find gifts that Fatima had tried to deliver to her mother. I would destroy them in anger. I enforced similar shunnings on other families in my community. When a young man wanted to marry outside the faith, I had him cut off. When a woman's son left Islam to become Christian, I oversaw his expulsion. I destroyed lives in the name of preserving the faith. I told myself I was doing God's work. In 2018, I received a call at 3 a.m. Fatima had been in a car accident. She was gone. She was 46 years old. At her funeral, held in a Christian church, I brought the Quran with me. I held it while the pastor spoke about Fatima's generosity and love. I held it while David delivered a eulogy about the woman who had chosen love over judgment. I held the Quran at my daughter's grave and felt nothing, completely, utterly empty. In the spring of 2024, I suffered a severe heart attack. I was 88 years old. During my 6 weeks in hospital, a Christian nurse named Maria cared for me with genuine kindness and compassion. She seemed to possess something I had not seen in decades: genuine peace and a gentleness that had nothing to do with fear or control. One afternoon I asked her what gave her such peace. She smiled and told me she read a Bible verse every single morning. She recited John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life." Whoever believes, not whoever performs, not whoever obeys 1,000 rules, not whoever proves themselves worthy through a lifetime of sacrifice, but whoever simply believes. Something broke open in my chest. For 70 years, my relationship with God had been transactional. Obey and be rewarded. But I had obeyed every rule, and I felt nothing but emptiness and despair. I asked Maria to bring me a Bible. I read the Gospels in secret in my hospital room. I encountered Jesus in a way I had never encountered any Islamic teaching. Jesus spent time with the outcasts. Jesus wept. Jesus loved without condition. Jesus forgave without requiring punishment or payment. The more I read, the more I wept. I wept for Fatima. I wept for the young man who took his own life. I wept for the families I had destroyed. One night, alone in my room, I fell to my knees and asked Jesus for forgiveness. In my own broken words, I asked him to forgive me for all the harm I had caused. And in that moment, something changed. I felt a presence that was different from anything I had felt in 70 years of Islamic prayer. It was intimate and gentle. It was complete acceptance of me, exactly as I was, a broken old man with nothing left to offer. And in that presence I found peace, unlike anything I had ever experienced in my entire life. But I want you to hear this clearly. Forgiveness from God does not undo the damage I caused in this world. My daughter is still dead. Those 3 years between when I turned her away and when she died, she could have known that I loved her. Those years are gone forever. I am 92 years old now, standing at the edge of eternity, with almost no time remaining before me. My heart is failing. My time is short. I cannot undo what I have done. Please do not make my mistakes. Do not waste your life as I wasted mine. Do not sacrifice your family on the altar of doctrinal purity. Find Jesus now while you still have time. Let him love you now. This is my testimony. I am running out of time.